Welcome to Regional Recovery Follow-Up Fundamentals, Module 2, Recovery Planning. In this module, you will learn how to effectively offer recovery planning and problem-solving support during follow-up. You will also learn when to obtain supervisor approval and request Regional Disaster Officer Exception approval for corrections and direct client assistance recommendations. Throughout this module, we will use scenario questions to ensure you understand what you have just learned. You will have 10 seconds to think about the question and determine your answer. After 10 seconds, we'll show you the correct answer so you can compare your answer with ours. During recovery planning, you will begin learning about the client's situation and what gaps exist that are hindering the client's recovery. The information you gather will drive your conversations as you help the client problem solve, offer referrals, and advocate on your client's behalf if requested. As we reviewed in Module 1, the Caseworker Follow-Up Checklist outlines 11 specific steps from preparing for the call to wrapping up and what to do after the call. Be sure to read through this tool before starting follow-up casework, along with the Casework Follow-Up Roadmap and the Supplemental Direct Client Assistance Roadmap. Keep these tools handy as you get started. Now that you have read the details of the case and noted any errors that need action, you can make the first follow-up contact. When you speak with the client, identify yourself as a Red Cross caseworker and ask how the family members are doing in their recovery. Set the tone and show empathy by understanding the feelings of your client. Keep your voice caring and compassionate and stay focused on the client's information and the recovery conversation. Be aware of your tone of voice as it conveys more than your words do. Use a tone that is calm, compassionate, encouraging, and positive, and give honest reassurances. Don't say that it's going to be okay. Don't say that it's going to get better. Don't make any promises about things you can't control. And avoid cliches. Remember to validate what your client is feeling while helping them to make constructive steps with encouraging language. Listen carefully and allow the client to share their experiences. Don't assume the resource you provided to another client is what this client needs. You need to listen to be sure the support you provide is personalized for this client. Listen for cues. 70% of all communication is said to be nonverbal. Be sure you are listening to the client telling their story. Do you hear worry, concern, frustration? Connect your client with a possible solution. Listen to the speed at which your client is talking, the tone that they are using, and how much they are willing to say. These are good indicators of how a client is handling their situation and can be an indicator of whether they could benefit from a referral to disaster mental health. Do you recall from Recovery Fundamentals how to set the tone? Which of these phrases are things you should say to your client? Is there anything I can do for you right now? My sister had a fire and How are you and your family members sleeping? You really shouldn't feel that way. It sounds like that may have been a very difficult situation. You should be thankful that you and your family got out alive. More than one answer may apply. Phrases you should say to set the tone with the client include, is there anything I can do for you right now? How are you and your family members sleeping? The answer to this question may point to stress and indicate a family member could benefit from disaster mental health support. And it sounds like that may have been a very difficult situation. Once you have set the tone and reassured the client, you can begin asking questions to see where the client is in their recovery and identify any recovery gaps you can find resources to help overcome, or any recovery roadblocks. As you are talking to the client, you should be entering information into CAS 2.0 as you go, but remember to click Submit as you finish with each tab. Ask the client how they are doing with the tasks identified in their recovery planning if a plan is already in the case record. Ask if they are moving along in the recovery and reconnecting with friends, family, their employer, school, or family social support network. Ask if they are in permanent housing or what their plans are for permanent housing. As you are learning information, you need to document it in CAS 2.0. You'll be completing the rest of the How Affected tab fields, condition of home, post-disaster housing, and insurance coverage. On later conversations, you will need to update these when there is new information. This information helps you learn what resources the client can access and where the resources are insufficient. Next, ask about community resources the client can access. These may have been provided at the initial interview, or they may be resources the client has located or been offered. Ask, do you have another caseworker in another organization? Have you contacted your landlord, insurance company, utility companies, employers, and children's schools? Do you have any connections to a faith-based or community group that may be able to help? Does any family member have active duty, reserves, retired, or dependent military status? And, for a large DRO, your supervisor will brief you if you should ask, are you planning to apply for FEMA or DSNAP, Disaster Food Stamp, assistance? If available, you may provide any of these referrals as you continue to speak to the client and learn more about their needs. At this point, you should be completing the client record. In addition to the full name, date of birth, and relationship for each family member, you will need to ask for the total family income and a military status and demographics for each person. Don't guess or skip these fields. Enter this information into CAS 2.0 under the Client tab. Income categories are now aligned with state poverty levels. Complete the income field, select the correct one, then move over to the next field, which is called At or Below Poverty Level. Take the number of people in family together with their income level and select the correct drop-down. This is useful information for someone who possibly might qualify for social services. You can make a referral to their local social services. This information is not related to qualifications for Red Cross services, but it helps clients in two ways. It can open doors for a particular client to assistance at other organizations and help you find appropriate referral resources. Aggregate data from many clients with no personally identifiable information can also open doors for Red Cross fundraising to help our clients. Be aware that citizenship is not a qualification for Red Cross assistance, but may be an eligibility factor for government programs. You have a client, a homeowner, whose home was damaged by a flood. You learn from reading the case that the client will be living with a relative temporarily until repairs are made. The client's home was insured. Most of the client's clothes and belongings were destroyed. The client was referred to the Salvation Army and a few other places to get clothes. What might you ask during the follow-up? How does your answer compare to ours? Were you able to acquire clothes and other essentials from the referrals? Have you contacted your insurance company? Will they assist you in obtaining medium-term housing and help with home repair? Have you determined where you will live for the medium term? Have you contacted any resources to repair the home? During your conversation, you will need to make corrections to issues you have identified and those noted during the case review. Correct these errors and make the record more complete. Items you can correct include adding missing data such as date of birth, relationship, income, or military status, changing an event that was listed as a fire, but it was a flood event, and changing a case that was listed as a single-family event, but should be a multi-family event. You will need to get supervisor approval if corrections include changing a home's livability. This can happen on a case-by-case basis and can result in needing to increase direct client assistance. Or increasing DCA if a client received less than they were qualified for. For example, there were 5 people in the case, which qualifies them for 2 units of lodging. They were only given 1 unit. You will need to get supervisor approval, and once received, you can make the adjustment and notify the client. Another example is a family of 3 whose home is not livable and have no place to stay. The client received only lodging and no immediate assistance. After getting supervisor approval, you can make the correction and reload the client assistance card with immediate assistance, quantity 3, and let the client know. Or the client was given the standard lodging tier, but it was a Friday. In this case, you can reload the Friday lodging tier and immediately deduct the standard lodging assistance. In order to get supervisor approval, call your supervisor and explain the situation. Once verbal approval is given, make a note in the case narrative documenting that the supervisor approved the correction. Then, reload the card, contact your client, and notify them of the change. Certain corrections require a Regional Disaster Officer, or RDO exception. If you discover an error requiring a RDO exception, contact the RDO or designee, verbally or by email, to request the exception and note the request made in the case narrative. The RDO will respond with a verbal approval or denial of the exception. Once the request has been approved or denied, the Regional Disaster Officer is responsible for documenting the decision in the Regional Disaster Officer RDO exception notes field in CAS 2.0, including the type of Regional Disaster Officer exception requested, and approved, denied, and the approver's name. Once you receive approval from the RDO, you can make approved corrections. Let's look at the RDO process for various corrections in more detail next. You will need a RDO exception when, because of a local holiday, hotel rates have increased. A RDO exception, to lodging, may be approved for a higher tier value for the holiday when a shelter is not available. For example, the lodging tier cost may be a change from Tier 2 to Friday Tier 2. Use the Direct Client Assistance price list for the assistance cost. A client needs to replace a lost client assistance card that still has a balance. First, suspend the lost card immediately. If it is not found right away, you will need to request RDO exception 6, replace card, to provide the unspent balance on a new card. Deactivate the lost card after the client receives the replacement card. You need to change multiple homes in an event from immediate A to immediate B. This could occur following a fire in an apartment building. The clients in 5 separate apartment units are unable to return home until damaged live electrical wires can be accessed and turned off. These clients received immediate A assistance, expecting to return in the next 48 hours to live in their homes. However, there's been a repair delay and unsafe conditions continue on day 3. Now the clients are qualified for immediate B DCA with approval for RDO exception 1, immediate assistance. You can reload the CAC with immediate B with the correct quantity and deduct the value of immediate A. In rare circumstances, when Red Cross is unable to meet with a client within the standard 7 days from a level 1, 2, or 3 event date, a RDO exception may be requested for immediate assistance. An example is a road that was washed away, making the clients and their homes inaccessible. In this situation, the RDO exception procedure may approve RDO exception 1, immediate assistance, to extend the time frame qualification. Which of the following errors are you able to correct without supervisor approval in CAS? Change home to not livable. Event was a flood, not a fire. Enter missing birthday. Enter relationship status of family member. More than one answer may apply. You can correct without supervisor approval in CAS an event if it was a flood, not a fire, enter a missing date of birth, and enter the relationship status of a family member. Great job! This concludes Module 2, Recovery Planning, where you learned how to effectively offer recovery planning and problem-solving support during follow-up. You also learned when to obtain supervisor approval and request Regional Disaster Officer Exception approval for corrections and direct client assistance recommendations. You are now ready for Module 3, Problem-Solving, Referrals, and Advocacy, where you will learn how to provide referrals to community assistance organizations and know when to advocate on a client's behalf with organizations and how to document referrals in CAS 2.0. You will also learn about when it's appropriate to share personally identifiable information and how to protect client confidentiality, as well as when to contact your supervisor or mentor. The following slide contains photo credits.